All right. This is the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. This is technically now a special meeting, January 16th, 2020. It had to become a special meeting because I hadn't officially filed all the proper paperwork at the town hall. I filed our dates, but didn't specify time and location. So that's all taken away now. I was taken care of, but not for this one. So it had to be called a special meeting. So all that means is that we can't alter the agenda as set forth. I don't think anyone had plans to anyway. All right, first up on the agenda is public comment. We don't have anyone from the public to comment. Next up is the review and approve minutes of the November 21st, 2019 regular meeting. We did not have a December meeting. I will make a motion to approve the November minutes.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion about the minutes? All good. All right. All in favor of approving the November minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? Anybody? Okay. We're approved. Next up, this is could be a milestone that we tried to accomplish in 2019, but we've pushed it into the first part of 2020. The open space plan. We had been talking about revisions, probably at least 3 meetings in 2019, maybe more than 3 meetings. And I had finally had a chance to put the last changes to it and circulated it around to everybody. Thoughts, comments, crickets.
Look good to me.
I mean, the changes had been discussed, so it's nothing substantial.
Yeah, the only thing I sort of, I have concerns about the fact that the properties that were traditionally identified as needing to be protected didn't necessarily fit under the matrix that we developed. And I also, you and I talked about the having some quotient for already protected properties. In other words, so that properties that didn't have any kind of protection might have a higher, factor. And then the other one is that I really feel that the largest pieces should be a real focus of ours. If the largest pieces of acreage should really be very important to us.
Is that in our priority list, our reading sheet?
Well, I think we're going to easily start tackling that as one of the objectives coming up. We've got our properties worthy of acquisition included in the open space plan. They've been there for a while. One of the objectives is to go through and review them and rank them and rate them. Of course, we need a system and not just kind of a haphazard process. So it's sort of A to B to C connection that we need to make, and A is developing or finalizing the rating and the objective and subjective rating system.
Okay.
Because I think, to your point, we've got the objective measures, and that scores them on percentage of forest land, wetland, size, whether farmland is included, if there's adjacent development. So these are all very easily measured items, but then there's the subjective part that needs to somehow impact
Right.
the overall score. And I do want to have a good discussion on that, because I agree.
Right. Yeah.
That just looking at a parcel, it gives it a score, but how does that, and everyone's got a score.
And
But there might be a greater interest in some of them that have lower scores, and that
And we
should
sort
bring
of
them up.
let the ball drop a little bit. I'd love to do this was your idea originally, but I'd love all of us to go score a couple. I know we had such a hard time doing that, but I think if all of us do walk a couple of properties together and try the criteria, would be really helpful.
Yep.
I know it's time consuming, but
We gotta do it.
yeah.
Gotta do it. All right, so Any other thoughts on the open space plan revision for 2020?
You're asking for input on the version you sent out
Yep.
to us, or the plan to work on it further in this coming year in 2020?
No, what I had circulated around.
Oh, okay.
Which was pretty much just fine tuning things that we had discussed. For
Yeah.
example, moving the natural resource inventory into an appendix, so it's not this massive table in the middle of the document.
Yeah, you just wrote up what we were talking about
Pretty much.
last meeting, right? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling through it and I'm thinking, I don't see anything that isn't that. Okay.
It was just fine tuning and based upon input from our prior meetings, how to rearrange things and adjust some wording. So,
We did talk about most of the changes before they were done at any rate, at prior meetings. I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much it's what we talked about and
Yep.
discussed previously.
just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything clearly missing or otherwise objectionable in it, so we could put it out there and then move forward and start tackling some of the objectives that are actually in the open space plan. And that's what I'm hoping we can talk mostly about tonight. So I will make a motion to approve the open space plan as I had circulated it around for 2020.
Second.
Any more discussion about it? Personally, I'm very pleased that I got a high-res image of the town seal, finally. All right, all in favor of the 2020 plan?
Aye.
All right, excellent. So, the next part is where I think most of our attention should focus this evening, is figuring out what we're gonna work on. So the open space plan does include objectives, and as I've learned over the years, you have goals, which are sort of principle statements, you have objectives, which support your goals, and they're measurable by certain measures within each objective. So what I've done is to try to come up with measures for each of our objectives, and I had sent that around to everybody as well. And I would like to go through each of the objectives and talk briefly about them and figure out which ones we want to work on. In the past, we haven't gone down to the level of setting ourselves some measures, so it was sort of, let's work on this objective, but this time we're breaking it down into almost check boxes that we've done this part of the objective, so we're moving forward. So at the end, after we've completed all the measures, the objective is complete, we can actually strike it off the 2021 open space plan because it's done. I might go a little out of order on this because some of these objectives I feel like I don't know as we need to focus on them. In particular, recreation near Town Hall and Rice Pond. This is an objective that had been on the open space plan for a very long time. And this speaks to down by the pavilion, tennis courts, the ball field, and the, what do they call it, not the trolley playground. There's a name for that playground down there for the kids.
That playground.
Would we have to dam that up again?
What's
To get
that?
a pond, it had a dam that's gone, right? Is that what happened to that rice pond before? Is that the area we're talking about?
It's right down here by the town
Right,
hall.
yeah,
It's
well,
right down the hill.
there was a dam there before, which actually created that rice pond. And I believe that got washed out with one of the floods or something.
Yeah,
So in order to bring that back, I don't know if there's still interest in that though.
that's,
It could be a skating pond, it used to be a skating pond, right?
yeah, and that's sort of why I wanted to start with this one, because I think it's an easy one to say that there's not strong interest around the table to work on that particular objective at this time.
Well, we have a skating area already, I mean, we
Yeah.
do have it's fairly safe compared to it. Although that pond wouldn't be very deep, I don't think, but nevertheless.
And it's
great.
And that pond is filled in quite a bit, I think,
Yeah,
since it was a
so it would
pond.
be a lot of work
I think
to
it would have to be some dredging to actually turn it into a,
If you have a lot of marginal weather, like we're experiencing a very warm winter so far, if you have a lot of marginal weather for skating, an artificial rink will freeze faster because it's not nearly as deep.
Good point.
so we're all in agreement that we don't need to focus on that particular
Agreed.
objective. All right.
Agreed.
Right above that one and below that one are two I want to talk about. Developing trails through existing golf courses. Again, an objective that's been in the open space plan for a very long time. It was there before the town owned the former country club.
How many golf courses do we have in Woodbridge?
Well, there's Oak Lane, right? There's right across the
The
street,
private one,
the private one.
yeah.
Oh, right.
And those are the two that I'm aware of that
I think that's it.
could be crossed in some way, maybe. But whenever I've reviewed the map of the town and where our trail network is, they don't quite come close to those two courses.
How did this even get on like that?
I don't know.
No.
That was well before me. This was in the 2003 plan, I think. So, I don't know.
It says extending the Greenway to the southernmost section of town and Racebrook tract requires passage through private golf courses.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the idea, is connecting the Racebrook tract.
And at the time, the now former country club was there and privately held. And if you go from Park Lane area south, you would cross through the country club property to get down towards the Racebrook tract. There'd have to be some street travel to get there, but
Crossing through the country club property is certainly feasible.
certainly
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a problem
now.
Yeah.
at all.
Right.
But again, stepping back and saying, is this something that we want to spend time on?
We can get to the racetrack track through other means right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, do you
And
have
would that, sorry, would that mean we'd be the Trailblazers and make the trail, and, or would we ask the Boy Scouts to do that, or what were you thinking?
We would probably work with other groups to make that happen,
But
like the
it
land
doesn't
trust
seem
or,
a priority to me, but,
yeah.
at some point, we can have a whole thing if we want any more trails and really decide where they should be, rather than just
Yep.
decide they should be there.
So,
what is your priority on here? So you must have
well, I'm
something.
kind of knocking off one so we don't need to
That's what
spend
I
time.
assume you're doing, yeah.
It's by process of elimination. Eventually, it'll all become clear.
Crystal.
I don't think that's the most important one.
The other one, it is important, and it's been something we've tried to do, the Greenway extension. What I envision is trying to connect the other side of town by West Rock, where we've tried to get the
So I know,
property purchased.
you don't care
Property.
about that.
We all know about that one. We walked that, right?
Yeah, so I'm definitely into that one.
Yeah,
So-
definitely.
yeah.
So that one, I think we've got a very almost laser focus on a part of this objective to try to
Really.
acquire either right of way or the property itself in order to extend the trails over on what's known as the Nugent property.
Just an aside, do you have any updates on that property?
I have no updates
Spell
on that.
Nugent.
Nugent.
So if there was,
Nugent
there
property.
was a new development at some point in the fall, right? And there was, or no?
There was rumblings that there was going to be a buyer, but I have not heard anything about it.
It's still in negotiations, I believe.
Yeah.
Frank, was there anything from the last meeting relevant to the meeting yesterday?
As far as the Nugent property goes, you mean?
No, in terms of the Greenway.
No, not,
The pizza dinner.
not so much as far as that section, other
Okay.
than there's a piece of property above the Greenway that New Haven owns, but it's all rock, and there was talk about if we couldn't acquire that particular Nugent property, we would go above but it's so steep that and there's like a rock slide there. You
Mhm.
probably know what I'm
Yeah, I
talking
do.
about. it's really hard to, there was talking to New Haven about, they'd probably give that up because they're not using it, you know, for a trail. But, to build a trail is almost impossible, but they were trying to think about different ways around that, so,
Okay.
Cool.
yeah.
So that's definitely something that could be focused on in this particular objective, is continuing to work towards extending the trail through that West Rock area.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
it's great, it's a great place to have it, you know, because we're working on, extending some trails through the, New Haven Park property down by, Ramsell Street. There's a whole section there that goes from Ramsell Street all the way down to, the properties that, the trails that run along the ridge there, West Rock Ridge, which would be, to the east side of Valley Street, and it would make a connection all the way down from the Pond Lily Preserve,
Mhm.
which was just, recently, you know, the dam came down there, and the New Haven Land Trust owns that, all the way down to Westville. So, yeah, we're working on that now, with the West River Watershed Coalition. We're working on those trails, so. And then eventually, of course, come up into Woodbridge with those trails to tie everything together.
All right.
So, that's why it's really an important spot there.
Yeah.
And there's lots of energy around that particular project.
Yeah.
Well, regionally and statewide,
Yeah.
yeah.
Coming back to Woodbridge specifically, another objective was to focus on the Fitzgerald property where the cornfields and walking trails are, to formalize some sort of protection on that property. This is a tricky one, simply because it had been gifted to the town for multi-use, so it wasn't given to the town specifically for open space. It was for whatever the town would need to do. But there had been interest in years past, and that's why this was in the open space plan for a while, in formally protecting it as exclusively open space.
I think that's an important priority personally.
What's the size of that?
The size of the Fitzgerald property, do you have any? A lot?
Yeah.
It's already.
More than
pretty
two,
well
less than
done.
100?
Yeah, so I agree, that should be up there.
But,
Is
yeah,
it, what,
but
so what
I'm
is the
saying that-
status
Dog
right
park's
now?
on it now.
Well,
It's
they
just,
keep coming
it's just
up
owned
with
outright by the
Well,
town?
we don't want that to happen.
That's
It-
what we need to do.
right.
It's
Exactly.
owned by the
Dog park's on
town,
there now, right? Is
but
the
could
dog
be
park on
used
there? No
for a
restrictions.
school
All I'm
or,
saying is we have the,
or any
the
other
walking
municipal
track
building
there,
or
we have
needs.
other things
Okay,
that are,
all right.
you know,
So
so-
you're thinking of
important.
something,
so
something that
what
would,
else, you know,
prevent development?
Maybe try and prevent, or,
Of it.
yeah, put some
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
restriction
what
on it.
happened also is
Yeah.
that some people put permanent structures in the garden that some people didn't want, and now there's a dog park. There's a talk of more of a skating rink,
right.
and it can keep going, and it has kept going. So, at some point, it would be. I mean, I think people really value it as open space, and I think special interests think of it as a place that they can put their interests, which is there's other places, and I think it's kind of a
I agree
scenic
that it's a
spot.
perfect, situation where the Conservation Commission should make a recommendation. You know, we should really look at it and
It's all,
make a recommendation to planning and zoning.
it's also a focal point of the town, just the way it is
Yeah.
right now, so I think it should remain that way, definitely.
In this,
But it's, again, we had no say in any of the development that's happened up to now. And I would call development, you know, as much, you know, whether it's the trees or the tree section or the dog park or the, you know, and, so I agree,
Yeah, we should be able to make recommendations
Think
on
we
that for
should.
sure,
yeah.
okay.
and this does weave in a bit with another objective, which is to develop use designations of open space. Back when we were working on the Plan of Conservation and Development, this is going back to 2013, 2014, we were trying to come up with a document that would clearly explain these are the types of use designations of properties, and this is where each parcel lays. So there's a low use, medium use, high use, and how do the existing town parcels fit into that? Is Fitzgerald considered a high use where it could be developed, or is it low use? And the document spells out low use, meaning kept in a natural state, medium use, I think, is some recreation, and high use is potential development or capable of being developed, and Fitzgerald would be in that category.
Currently.
Yeah, currently. And then categorizing all the town parcels and then talking about how you can move a property from a potential high use into a low use in terms of open space.
That is separate from zoning, the use categories you're talking
Right.
about, use, it says designations on here,
Yeah.
use designations.
Yeah,
But it's just for town-owned properties, is that
right,
correct?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And the idea was to try to help make clear to everybody that this parcel in Fitzgerald keeps coming up because it's the one that is
Mhm.
generally most confused, that people see it as open space,
Right.
but technically it's not. And then from there you can have a meaningful discussion instead of people thinking one way and people thinking the other way, and you're not having a good discussion because people have different ideas of what the purpose is of that property. So the intent was originally on this one, classify everything in town so that then when you're talking about a parcel, everybody understands, oh, this is not open space, this is actually potential to be developed.
I think that would require lots of education and lots of perspective and lots of this. I think we should start with one parcel, maybe not even just Fitzgerald, and research it and try to figure it out and set up the criteria and then spread it out rather than try to create a blanket thing for all of them, as if we can really perceive the complexity that each one is under.
But I think
I
we should,
think it was gonna be based upon what the deeds were. Like legally, what can you,
Well, then
Do
Fitzgerald would be a,
Well, another
Hi.
one is Thomas Darling,
right,
right?
There
That's
you go.
huge,
That's
that's 157 acres.
yeah.
And what,
I mean,
what's-
that's a lot bigger than Fitzgerald.
And everybody here, does everybody know
No.
what its use designation could be? Could it be developed? Is it preserved as open space only? Is it
No,
somewhere
it's
in
not.
between?
is,
Yeah.
what is it?
Right,
He
That-
sounds like
it's-
he knows.
Well, I don't specifically know, other
Farm,
than
right?
it's, given to the town of Woodbridge, and they have a management agreement which they've given to the buildings, to the Historical Society, but the rest of the land is, there's no restriction on it. They lease the farming piece, they have the Boy Scouts there, we have trails there, but there's,
They decided to
you
have
know.
some apartments there, they could do that.
well, and
so could we develop a process to, change these
Yikes.
things? I think
Right.
that's what we have to do, find
Yeah.
a process to change it legally or whatever. Look into that and find out how to go about it. I think that,
It's challenging because we don't
Yes.
really have much authority as a commission, but I suppose it would be better if we could at least make more recommendations
right.
than we do.
well,
And-
and that's why I'm thinking if we focus on the biggest pieces that are not, don't have restrictions first, right? And as you say, as you're saying,
Right.
each one is very individual and requires, I don't think we can sort of put a blanket, sort of a template over each property.
there's probably
I
some
mean,
legal.
Fitzgerald is very different from, say, Thomas Darling, but they have the same threats.
But somebody mentioned deeds, so there's probably some legal processes that we'd have to go through, and get the town to approve those things
Right.
in order to change it.
Use restriction sounds like something that's governed through zoning, kind of to what Tracy was saying, that what are the tools for this? But we could make recommendations that these, that the Darling House property be moved into, I'd have to look at the zoning categories to say what it would be, but into something that restricts it so that you can't build apartments there, right? So that it's basically agricultural or passive recreation or, whatever the woods would be,
Yeah.
like nature conservation or.
But,
something
and
like that.
interestingly enough, there is a zoning designation, which I only learned this fall in dealing with the Thomas Darling, which is a special designation which even town wasn't aware of, which is a town-owned property, and how there are exemptions to zoning regulations for a lot of those. So that's something I'd love to know a little more about.
Yeah, well, when Chris was here presenting, she said the town can exempt itself from zoning regulations.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly, so
Period.
the
That's
town-owned
it.
properties, there you go, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the answer.
Simple.
I missed that, yeah.
Yeah. So, that was another objective, to talk about use designations. And the discussion is becoming a bit more robust as I'm going through these.
It seems like we need to do that,
That-
like we need to talk about that.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna jump up to something similar, and what you brought up earlier is to finalize the rating system, objective and subjective, and be able to apply it to the properties in town. And then that way we can tie into the other objective in here, which is to review properties worthy of acquisition. So it's sort of a hand in hand almost, but because we're so close to having a process and a system for rating and reviewing, my feeling is that is that we should push that one over the finish line so that then we could actually review
Were you
the
involved in
properties.
that part?
Did I have any interest in that to begin with? Just a little.
So you wanna handle that one first because it's almost done.
Yeah, and
I think
and
it's-
it kind of.
And I also think it's,
Relevant to everything else.
you made it a
Yeah.
primary objective, and I think everything else
Build on
falls
it, yeah.
after that, yeah.
It kind of, once you get past that, then it makes
Yeah.
it easier to accomplish some of the other objectives that are in place.
Okay.
The other.
And I would be in favor, again, we started to do this before, is have some, extra work groups towards that end. I mean, you've worked so hard at this, you put so much time in this, I think all of us would like to help you.
I would appreciate any help. And it's a tricky one because without going through the story of what we've reviewed as a commission over the last 5 years and trying to come up with a rating system, we looked at what other towns and states have done to try to come up with objectives ratings. You've gone to the town of Windsor, I think, and their matrix, which is even more mind-boggling than what I presented. But once you've got it, I think we can move in. The hard part is just tweaking the last confusing bits, and I think that's where we are now. We've got,
Well, I honestly
mostly
think with
done
all
in-house.
the work you put in the last commissions, this is potentially, you know, a benchmark for other towns.
yeah, and it's a tool that can be used not only by us, but as you say, if other towns want to leverage it as well. I can't remember if I had circulated it to everybody that's new here, if Sharon.
I don't think I've
Yeah.
seen it.
I don't think so, not separate from the
Okay.
open space plan.
All right. So
What are the other towns we looked at? There were a couple of other matrices.
in
Guilford,
Guilford comes to
Yeah.
mind. I feel like there was
Stonington.
or a Bristol, Rhode Island, or something.
It might be good if maybe you circulate it all again to this group,
Yeah.
so we can just, yeah,
So what I'll do is I'll, after this meeting, email everybody
before that meeting.
Perfect.
some homework
Yeah.
to take a look at rating systems. And the part that I personally struggle with is the objectives are easy, the objective ratings, but it's the subjective, and how does the subjective skew the objective?
Well, what are some of the things you're thinking of are subjective things, like the view or the,
You brought it up. You were the one that came up with the good idea of having the subjective. I think the view is one of them, like the view from the golf course, looking towards the sunset.
or the ocean?
You can't put a number on it. It's more of a personal interpretation.
Well, and look, things like historic,
Yeah.
you know,
Start.
if somebody has a certain use for so many years and everybody's used it for so long, whatever that use was, how important is that? You know, I mean, if you happen to be a preservationist, it's very important, you know,
Mhm.
but,
Yeah.
And I think some land just seems healthier than other land. I mean, some
Well,
land just has a,
separate-
that's a
has
cool
a-
point.
To that end, separate farm would be an example. There's a historic one that you like to keep because it
Yeah.
has that value, that whole area there.
So that's some of the subjective part. The other part of the discussion around subjective matter is we're here now, and in another 15 years, it's going to be a different group of people sitting here, and they're going to have a different subjective opinion
Oh, geez,
about
we're
a
gonna be here
parcel.
forever.
I'll be here. But the
You'll
objective.
probably still
See
be
those
there.
cement shoes?
Yeah.
So are you saying that we can sort of give guidance on subjective, but leave it somewhat fluid?
Yeah,
And write in
'Cause-
that it may, those
Yeah.
criteria may change.
because the objective ones are what they are. It's unlikely that a stream going through a property is going to change dramatically in the next 30 to 50 years,
Other than dry out.
other than dry out.
Okay.
Or the amount of forest land on a open space parcel is likely going to increase unless it's used for farming. So there's some objective ratings that you just are gonna be kind of fixed, but.
Size of trees, how mature the trees are.
Right.
Would be objective. So
Yeah.
would it make sense to have a special meeting associated with just talking about that, firming this up in a month?
Either a special meeting or our next regular meeting, that is all we talk about.
Yeah, we can do that.
I think that's fine.
Look at some of the properties and see if they have some subjective and objective, you know,
Good.
qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this one being near and dear to my heart, I don't wanna be the only one pushing this on everybody, but it's something that we can focus on.
Well, can we make a plan to maybe do this first and then do Fitzgerald and ranking other spaces second, so that happens before like September of this year or something?
Yep. Yep. So I will do that.
For the ranking the properties, you're gonna email out to us what, the draft or the working version of that or whatever?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yep, so the objective is called property classification, rating, and identification. And
Property what?
classification, rating, and identification. So I will send around to everybody the last draft of the objective ratings and some examples of what I had done with it.
So, do you call the objective part just the objective?
Yeah. And then I'll also include references to where we had looked years ago at other classification rating systems as to how we had pulled this one together.
Okay.
And then at our next meeting, we can focus on that.
Sounds great.
Right.
The only other objective that's in here that we hadn't talked about is the open space management plan. That's a big one. The ideas that have been talked about in the past is to have a management plan that's sort of broad strokes that can apply to most any town property, but then you can focus it specifically on unique parcels: Eldersley, Fitzgerald, Country Club, Alice Newton Street Park. There had been work already done for Alice Newton Street Park and Fitzgerald by the U.S. School of Forestry, and that could be a foundation upon which a more generalized document could be put together, or more specialized documents could be done.
So, sort of related to that, I did have Yale School of Management down to look at the Thomas Darling piece to give proposals for forest management, which is another piece that I think, you know, as conservationists, one of the things we have to look at is how do you develop, you know, funds and utilize your resources to allow you to do all the objectives we want, to keep the open spaces and to steward the forested areas and the wetlands. I would love to get somebody from Yale School of Management, the forestry school, up here to present to us.
Okay. And to tie into this particular
Yeah,
objective,
yeah.
to better educate all of us
Okay.
on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
And this
So,
is about open space management specifically?
well,
ranking?
no, open and forested.
Forest
So
management.
basically,
By our
What would you say?
by our definition, forest is open space.
Forestry, yeah.
okay, so, yeah, so, open space management.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will, if you wanna put a note, I'll make,
Contact.
how's your contacts on there?
I have no contacts.
Okay, so I'll
You
do
will-
that
yes.
initiative.
I
Yeah.
I have that many contacts.
I never know with you.
I got that many contacts.
Anybody else with contacts there?
The Yale School of
Not
Forestry.
you.
You have some?
Sort of, we're not best friends, but yeah.
So maybe we should contact we'll email and talk about how, we can do that
Yeah, you know what I
together.
mean? Yeah, I know some people there, yeah.
Yeah,
I know
so
a
why don't
couple
we,
people.
we'll email and figure out how to best contact.
Okay.
All right.
That management plan, talking about, that would, one of the big things that would address would be management of invasive species, right?
This
Is that
doesn't,
where
that,
that
their,
falls?
that plan, it, in their preliminary study, it includes reviewing that, but the plan that I tried to get them to focus on more was, forest management in terms of providing some income.
Oh. Who does the management of invasive species?
It's a good question.
Places like the Darling House Woods, where
Well, I,
Volunteers.
burning
Yeah, I
bushes
will
are
tell you.
being getting- yeah.
all I know about it is that, all through New England, there are groups that are getting together to manage certain kinds of invasive species. I don't know groups that are doing all invasive species, but they all sort of, it's like the, you know, the river guys that wanna do the, you know, the, what's the?
Knotweed,
Not the,
Well,
knotweed.
what is it?
knotweed,
Oh,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
ah.
And then you have, you know,
Also
Also
so,
a bad one,
yeah, and then, so you have different groups of specialty groups that are interested, but they're all private.
So
I
it's-
don't think
so it's
there's
volunteers.
much,
Yeah.
other, cause all, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but what the state of Connecticut is doing is they just, it's informational.
Yeah,
There's no actual money going towards it,
not that I'm aware of.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it is just volunteers. Tom Ebersold over on West Rock,
Yeah.
he's
right.
always going up
Yeah, he
there and
does a lot of
taking
it.
out the invasives.
They,
Autumn olive and,
this is kinda neat, they have goats down at, eating the.
Yeah, I know.
Down at the
Westville.
park, yeah, in Westville, yeah, they have goats eating the knotweed down there, yeah. And, hey,
so it's all private
it works, yeah.
interest.
I met with Tony Genovese just because I had this idea that we have some money and I thought maybe the interest from that money could be used for specific projects. Turns out the interest from the 60 or 80,000 we do goes into a general fund and we don't get any benefit from that, but we do have this budget, and next year instead of $400 we have $8,000. What he said is that,
What, with the conservation budget?
Hold that thought,
Huh?
cause I think that's the next item on the agenda. Anything else on the, objectives? I think we're clear that we'll get stuff
Well,
out, I'll
as,
get
as
stuff
far
out
as
for
the
the next,
management,
for the next meeting.
It's fine.
Alright, sorry Sharon, cause I did have it on the agenda tonight to talk about the
Oh,
open
fine.
space fund, and public outreach. I put it, public outreach and community investment, cause I was trying to put some terms around what you were trying to
okay,
discuss.
so should
So,
I discuss
yeah,
it now?
so, yeah,
So I spoke to Tony and I think we have an approved budget of $8,000 next year.
I don't know what has been approved that way, we've
Well, he
proposed,
seemed to think that we were having that money, so I'm not sure that that's true, but
be good.
that would be shocking.
Is
That-
it
in a
early
good
to
way.
decide next year's
That
budget?
would be good. That's what-
Meeting, usually, maybe Pua can chime in over there. When Board of Finance meets to approve budgets, is it end of January, beginning of February?
Hang on,
Hang on, she's,
let's do this right.
Identify yourself, please.
My name is Pua Ford, I am proud to be a resident of Bethany. Next week begins the operating budgets for all the town departments on Tuesday, Thursday, and then the following Tuesday. After that, the Board of Selectmen meet sometime, probably during February vacation, to do what they think should be done with the budget. Probably making cuts here and there.
Yeah.
And then on March 4th, the Board of Finance will be doing the same thing. Then it goes to public hearing in April, and it's not final until annual town meeting in May.
okay,
There you
thank you, Pua.
And that's for
Excellent
2021.
report, thank you for it.
That's for,
Wow, very informative.
so
June.
July 2020 through June 2021 is the fiscal year. So, yes, so in the next
so
several weeks, I have the opportunity to go before the Board of Finance and plead our case as to why
okay,
we
so
should.
we won't assume that we have that
Yeah.
budget, but it would be nice to have it.
Sounds like there's support.
In any
Sounds
case,
like-
he said that if we have a project before then, he might be able to utilize possible a small amount to make it possible for us to do something before, cause right now we have $60 in our budget till July. But what I was going to him for was thinking that maybe we could do something that is very tangible, that the town gets to perceive our functioning, and it's a direct asset to the town, because all of this, though cognitively an asset, doesn't necessarily show up as something that the town can say, oh gosh, the Conservation Commission just did that. So I was thinking that maybe we can all think of things, or a thing that we could do, maybe plan a day where people pull out knotweed, or, you know, something where we can do something that, or, you know, get $500.
Trails need a lot of work. I mean, you know, we
Yeah.
could work on trails. They do need a lot of work.
Yeah,
There's
or-
always work to be done on
Or,
trails.
you know, plant 1,000 bulbs somewhere, you know, or something, or some indigenous plants, or if we have, if we do get money, he can, allocate $1,000 to us, and more than $1,000, or it needs to go before the selectmen, but some of the resources that are allocated for, I forget the title that we put on that for the $8,000, but it can be relocated, possibly reassigned to a project that we have that
So
can
Sharon,
happen
I
outcome.
love the idea, because everybody's like, what's the Conservation Commission? What do they do? And all we do, all our power is to recommend. But if we, you know, start developing a little, you know, doing a little marketing on
Project.
our own, doing some of these things, people might pay a little more attention to our recommendations, right? I love the idea.
That's
And
good.
you know, one Saturday morning in April, we can all plant 300 bulbs or 500 bulbs, you know, like it doesn't take long to do that kind of thing.
And we can under 1,000 to that.
And actually, what I would really like to do is clean up some of the litter that's in the Amity area. And to that end, I've been starting to do that, but I would love any help. And it makes a big difference even with a small amount of time, and maybe we can get a Boy Scouts
And a small amount of
involved.
people. Do they do Earth Day still?
Yes, the town
They do?
is doing.
But they're putting it in May. But
Yeah.
litter, things like that are ongoing.
I know, it's
and
not just
we
once a year.
Yeah.
We could all just, you know, say, just the 5 of us, one Saturday, we'll spend 3 hours doing something and make it fun, right? And have a potluck afterwards. And but anyway, I'd like to make us actionable in a way that's fun for us, a little bit visible, and adds to the beauty of the town.
I like it.
So that was my thought.
I
And
like
it doesn't have to be onerous, and we may have some money to do it.
And I also like that you asked Tony about the interest on the open space fund, which I find curious that it doesn't get reinvested back so it grows,
Right.
that it goes to the general fund.
He said that's true of all,
Yeah, across the board.
but
Yeah.
we can make a
Yeah,
point.
but just because it's true doesn't mean it's right. And
But also-
what can we do to change something like that?
Probably
But
written
also,
somewhere.
one thing you can do is to, we can make that, if they're having trouble offering us money, we can say, well, we're making probably 2,000 or 3,000 on this money already, so we should have access to at least that amount for projects. So, that was my thought. Now do I have to write it down? Yes.
You can just, you don't have to
That
write
was
it
a
all
good
down. You
idea.
don't have to write a book about it. You can just
We're gonna write
summarize
that
it.
up. That's
Okay.
a great idea.
But I think it's fantastic, and I'm all
It is.
for if you want to propose.
Do some,
Well, why don't we
some-
also
do
propose
something
that
visual.
maybe even set a time in the meeting that we just talk about, you know, brainstorm ideas, cause there's no wrong ideas, and are we interested, fits our time thing, what,
And this, I think, is the right time of the year to plan something like that, because right now it's been gorgeous outside,
Right.
but this is supposed to be winter. Well, we're not doing a whole lot outside, but we could plan for, like you said, April, May plantings.
or getting rid of,
Even a cleanup would be
Even
good,
a
really.
cleanup.
You know,
Cleanup is
that's
actually easier now because you can see into the forest
Oh, it's so
and
easy.
go after
and
those
kind of
boughs that are
advertise and
way
get
out
some
there.
other folks on board. You
yeah,
know?
I mean, just underneath the Amity Stop and Shop area, it's, if you look, an hour and a half of all of us, and it would look beautiful.
Yeah.
And if we got you know, it's amazing how simple it is, really. And it definitely allows plants to have more fun if there's not plastic everywhere. So, anyway, you know, I don't wanna create a idea that nobody wants, so I think if we sort of all generate it together, the chances of it being something we all have.
But I think there's interest around
No,
the
that's
table for
that's a
something
great
like
idea.
that.
Maybe we should get like a pamphlet out there, put it in the library, get
We used to have a line item for marketing in our budget. I think it's still there.
Well, yeah,
And
and I'd
pick
like
a
to keep
day.
it simple. I wanted to make this isn't like we make it such a progress that it's onerous. We can all just say, okay, 9 o'clock on Sunday,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
put out an announcement to Beth Heller, but I don't wanna detract from Rid Litter Day either. I just wanna make it like the Conservation Commission wants to take on this area to clean it up, do you wanna help?
So, similar in that idea, we've discussed that before, but I'd love to generate interest in the high school, to really ramp up this whole GPS thing with our trails, informational stuff. Cause again, that sort of awareness has a lot to do with the marketing thing. And I think, figuring out a strategy to drum up using the youth, who are so much better at this than most of us, maybe not you, but me certainly. I'd love to see that program. I mean, the stuff
Do
that
what
we.
again?
What are you talking about? GPS
So-
stuff with the trails at the high school?
So all the trail systems and everything else is, we at the what are the Kakiwik? We've gone to the last couple of years, there are all these presentations with these, phone apps and stuff where you go on the trails and you go there and you get all the information on your phone about where you're standing and how many miles you have to go, whether it's exercise, whether it's nature, whether it's, geology, everything, but it's all there in your phone, so it entices you to go out and go onto the trails, and when you're on the trails, you're always saying, I wonder what that is, or I wonder what was here then, right? So,
So the
Like a
Wikipedia of a
self-guided tour.
trail,
yeah,
Yeah.
pardon?
Wikipedia of a trail,
Yeah,
Yeah.
kinda.
wow.
And that-
Right, well, you've been seeing, describe it a little bit.
Well, I was gonna piggyback on what you're saying, because there's, tomorrow morning is a meeting of our trails group in town, so it's myself, members from the Woodbridge Land Trust, the Parks Association, and the town trailmaster are coming together to review our trails guide and talk about standards and wayfinding and how to make the trails more interactive. Whether it's using technology that you have, or whether it's signposts, whether it's geocaching, whether it's maps that don't exist now, but maps that are in the middle of the trail, so you're halfway through and you go, I'm where? And it's on the map, so there's some energy getting moving on that.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Well, maybe you could ask them who they know at the high school that might be helpful for our project.
And they've definitely got some contacts at the high school. I know Tim, I think he's with the Parks Association, has a lot of ties into the high school, especially trying to renovate the Newton Trail behind the high school, trying to get that spruced up. I want to be mindful of time.
Okay.
Me too.
So I think we're on to item number 6, which is just the chairman's report. And I had 3 things, and let's see if I can remember what they were. One was the trails, and I kind of gave an update on that already about the meeting that's happening tomorrow. Coming out of that meeting, I expect that we'll have the first revision of the trail handbook, which is meant for general guidelines of how the town, the Land Trust, and the Parks Association manage the trails and maintain the trails. So cleanup, rerouting the trails as needed, updating the blazing, the signage. So there'll be something tangible coming out of that I'll be glad to share with everybody.
Great.
I got an update on the former country club property, because I was curious to know where that stood, and at this point, the Board of Selectmen is in their final discussions to have a proposal put forward, and it sounds as though there's going to be a referendum on it coming in the next few months. The details are still to be worked out, apparently.
So will there be something different from what was presented to us last fall?
It sounds like it's a refinement of what was presented last fall.
So are they still headed for a referendum, or?
It sounds like there's a referendum is on the horizon. Like it hasn't been yanked off the table. It sounds like it's still
Bless you.
still coming.
And how would that work so that we
Did
would
they
get the
just-
latest before the referendum?
I have a feeling everybody around the table will know it at the same time. It'll probably be a newspaper article or an email from the town hall.
Who could call us?
Or Pua could individually call each one of us, since she's recording all of the meetings. But
Alert.
but stay tuned. It sounds as though sometime within the next, I would say 4 to 6 weeks, there's going to be some movement forward as to the referendum and a date for it to be set. And the other item was the Agricultural Commission in town has been approved. It is forming. It is a thing. I don't have the email in front of me. Their mission was fairly brief in its statement, and it revolved around informing, and I should probably just find this email from Betsy. If I could find it on my phone, I could read it to you. Let's see, trail meetings. So the Agricultural Commission, it establishes an agricultural commission to help identify issues of concern to farmers, to raise public awareness of the benefits of local farms and working lands, and to identify ways in which the town can support the business and land use needs of local farms.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I can forward this. And that's it.
So the one thing I would ask all of us here, is that they have to choose commissioners, right? And I've asked the key people in the Farmers Forum, which are 41 farmers in Woodbridge, to make suggestions. And I really think that we as a Conservation Commission, if we have any suggestions on who might be, we think would be good for Agricultural Commission, we should suggest it. Mika, who's head of the, the ordinance,
Well, he was head of, or part of the ordinance committee, and also on the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, but I think it'd be great for us to give some input. I mean, as any commission, they're gonna have to be, a balance between Republicans and Democrats, but I think it'd be great for us to, if any of us have suggestions, to at least put those into to the ordinance group.
Would it make any sense for one of us to be a double member and a liaison between the two? I don't know, John.
I do not want that job either.
No, but I was thinking as you said that, we were discussing Darling House and farming property, and if we wanna make recommendations, that will add another layer to that. I would think that we might wanna meet with them first, or maybe we don't care what
They
they think.
can't
but-
be interested.
Yeah, you're speaking very low.
That made me think about our discussion earlier about the Darling House, and that's farming, some of that is farming land, and we were thinking about it, down the line, making recommendations to properties, and now if the property involves farming, we should probably meet with them and discuss what our recommendations are going to be, or we can go rogue and do our own thing, but I think that just adds another layer to our thinking.
Or
We could
it
work
becomes,
together
or
with
the
the-
Darling House becomes the domain of the new agricultural
Well, I don't think so.
commission
I think your point about use is very important. That as Conservation Commission does not have the same goals as an Agricultural Commission. But as a town-owned property, I think it's very important that we make some statement on use, right? Because it may include farming. I mean, we could say, yes, we like farming, but it may say, but, we don't want any other development, or
we might wanna say you can't clear cut the trees and
Yeah.
start growing corn there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's a conservation objective, yeah.
So anyway, so the duties of this commission that had been put on us, I wanna say a year and a half ago now, for agricultural purposes, is now shifting towards this
Right.
new commission. And Betsy didn't have off the top of her head whether it was a commission of 5 or 7. There's always seems to be an odd number
I
on
was told
commissions.
5, but, yeah.
5, okay. So that's gonna be formed up in the next month or two. I think the positions will be filled in the next month or two. So as to Leland's point, yeah, if you have thoughts of people that you think would be good to be on that commission, definitely reach out to the town hall, or if you got Mika specifically, you can contact him.
Do we have a definition of farmer? I mean, is it someone who has a vegetable garden in their backyard, or a fruit bush, or is it?
I don't-
how are we
interested in
defining
farming.
a farmer?
I have my personal thought of what a farmer is. My
Right.
personal thought of a farmer is someone who's living is primarily
I was just thinking
Of
41 farmers sounds
farming.
like a lot of I wasn't aware there were 41 farms in Woodbridge,
There are,
so I was
yeah.
just wondering how that
Well, so
was
anyway,
defined.
Yes,
individually.
no, exactly
So,
right,
right,
exactly right,
not
but
profit.
it's surprising how many people are actually doing farming, for profit, or trying to.
I sold peppers for $6.
I mean, even our,
Can I
we have
go to
mushroom
Germany?
farm, right?
Yes.
And we're only 8 acres of land.
Okay.
Leland,
Right.
have you talked to the Lucianis down on Litchfield Turnpike? I know, one of them is trying to keep that farm going.
Yeah, he's been at the farms a lot.
Okay,
Excellent.
great, yeah. He's-
All right.
He's really.
Okay.
Being mindful of time, Sharon made a motion to adjourn. I have nothing else to discuss under the chairman's report.
I would like to second Sharon's motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Great.